Support for Gulf States Gumbo comes from the Britannia Theater Uptown in New Orleans, playing new movies, classics, and unique programming. Celebrate the holidays at the Britannia and don't miss monthly 35 and 70 millimeter screenings. Information at thebritannia.com for all showtimes.
From the Gulf States Newsroom, this is the Gulf States Gumbo, your weekly serving of stories from Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana. This week will be a little different. I'm a former WWNO fellow and this week's guest host, Sophia Anderson. I'll be taking over this episode to give you a taste of a series I reported with a team of student journalists at the University of Missouri. It's called Who Owns the Flavor? And the whole idea is in the name, the cultural ownership of food. This is the third episode in the three-part series, and in it, we came down to New Orleans. I'll turn it over to my co-reporter, Paige Halter.
When you come to New Orleans, you can immediately feel that food isn't just part of life, it is life. It's history, it's celebration, it's identity. You don't even have to be in the city to hear about the different types of cuisine offered. The terms Creole and Cajun will likely come to mind. Creole is simply the mix of many cultures, a common phenomenon in Louisiana where European settlers, Indigenous Americans, and Africans forcibly relocated during slave trade all met. Cajun refers specifically to French settlers. Creole scholar Barry Jean Ancelet says Louisiana has been a constantly evolving gumbo, pun intended, of culture for centuries. From a culinary perspective, the only criteria for what sticks and what doesn't is whether something tastes good or not. New Orleans sits at the confluence of the Mississippi River and the Gulf of Mexico, making its culinary traditions deeply tied to trade, migration, and cultural exchange. This year also marks the 20-year anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, a catastrophe that reshaped the city's geography, demographics, and foodscape, especially along racial lines. In this episode of Who Owns the Flavor, we'll dive deep into the emotional ties food holds for families and how a community remains knit together through faithfulness and flavor. At the heart of New Orleans food culture stands Ducky Chase's, a legendary Creole establishment. They opened their doors all the way back in 1941, bubbling with food, music, and potential, all amidst a crucial time for the United States, the Civil Rights Movement.
During that time, we were in a segregated South where this room, right now, would have been illegal to eat. But never was there a time that Ducky Chase Outdoors was always open to both blacks and whites and whoever else in this community that wanted to move this community forward.
That's Edgar Duck Chase, grandson of Leah Chase and the executive chef at Ducky Chase's restaurant. Before the United States Supreme Court reversed its 1896 decision in Plessy v. Ferguson, Ducky Chase's restaurant had become the hot spot for discussing issues of civil and economic rights in the African American community.
But that dining room held civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King, people who just understood the importance of a diverse room, a diverse community, moving the country forward.
Imagine that. A room typically meant for sharing meals, now sharing a key individual in history. Now, to celebrate differences, instead of allowing them to pull people apart, the restaurant was more than just what was seen on the menu. And it was highlighted by a certain queen of Creole cuisine, Leah Chase.
And Leah Chase is my grandmother, who's no longer with us, but she is. You will feel her spirit all through this restaurant today. You will feel her spirit in the food. You'll feel her soul.
That's Dottie, an individual who's familiar with the restaurant scene, and especially Leah Chase. Mrs. Chase would not only introduce one of the first African-American fine dining restaurants to the country, but also showcase African-American art. Ducky Chase's restaurant was the first art gallery for Black artists in New Orleans.
She's had presidents in this restaurant. She's had dignitaries from all over the world.
It's a reminder of why Ducky Chase's became a sanctuary in the first place. A place where people weren't just fed, but seen. A place where differences weren't a threat, but a strength.
This city is built on culture. It's built on a lot of different influences. When you look at it, right? We had the French coming in, we had the Spanish, we had the Native Americans, we had West African influence, Italian influence. That is our cuisine.
Tons of influence plus tons of family history. These two factors are the recipe behind the cuisine at Dooky Chase's restaurant. So when it comes to owning a flavor, dish, or idea, Dook says it's more than just an idea you can replicate. It's a story that is more unique than any recipe you can find online.
One thing that they can't take and you can't buy is the story. You can't buy the story of my great-grandparents. Right. You can't buy the story of his parents and all that. Right. So yeah, you can go across the world and say we have New Orleans gumbo, and shout out to Leah Chase, we have Dooky Chase gumbo on the menu. But, and it may, I don't think it tastes the same because they're not using the same ingredients. Knowing what to do, they know how we make it. But you can't recreate what we have here because of that history.
Owning a flavor in New Orleans isn't really about ownership at all. It's about stewardship, about protecting the meaning behind a meal. At Dooky Chase's, that idea comes up again and again. Dishes don't just appear on the table. They arrive carrying ancestry, labor, and memory. The monetization of a recipe or dish is what Dook says muddles the story behind it. Similar to the Italian family restaurants on the Hill, generations come back to places like Dooky Chase's because the flavors don't drift. They anchor people to their memories.
And what we love here is when a grandmother comes in now with her grandkids, but before she came in as that grandkid, and she has that memory. So now you see that generation coming through with the same memory. And she can say, I remember coming here and tasting that gumbo, and it tastes the exact same way as when my mother brought me. In those experiences. So a lot of dishes here, we want to make sure they're true and consistent, and the classics remain the classics.
But in a city as storied as New Orleans, protecting flavor isn't just about what happens inside the kitchen. It's about understanding the community that surrounds it. And that begins with respecting the place itself.
Don't come in and start to think just because you were here for a year or two that you understand the fabric of this city, and you may say this shouldn't be the way it shouldn't be, because the fabric of the city is the fabric of the city before you were here.
It's a history that's been bubbling up for decades, growing deeper and deeper as time goes on. Chef Frank Brixton has been cooking for over 50 years and teaches contemporary Creole and Acadian cuisine in New Orleans.
I was just so proud and happy for this city that we continue to evolve and grow. And to use the most basic analogy possible, think of a tree. A tree has roots. That's me. A tree has a trunk. That's the next step. And then all these beautiful limbs and leaves start to grow and blossom. And that's how our restaurant culture is.
A culture dressed with tons of flavor. But does that mean the culture owns the flavor?
It has to come from you and your heart, whether your grandmother created the recipe, whoever, but it has to be your story. If you're trying to chase somebody else's story, you're gonna fall. The restaurant business is hard enough to operate in of itself. It's gonna be double as hard when you're trying to chase something that's not true to who you are. Mm-hmm. So stay true to who your flavors are, tell your story through your food.
It's protecting the flavor rather than owning it, using the flavor as a mechanism to tell a story unique to your family, something no one else can take from you.
But when you look at the menu here and you see our staples that's been around for the 85 years we're coming up on, we want them to taste the same because we want those people that are loyal to us to bring back those memories. Memories matter, experiences matter.
The flavor becomes the experience, a taste that tells a story. For restaurants in New Orleans, as years go on, even as the city changes, the recipe remains the same. New Orleans is beautifully situated between the Mississippi River and Lake Pontchartrain. It served as a great place for trading resources beginning in the 1800s. Today, its proximity to the Gulf still provides the seafood that fuels the Cajun and Creole restaurants, as well as their stories. Wayne Beckett Sr., a third-generation member of the famous culinary Beckett family, says that cuisine is made or broken by its place in the community. He owns and operates Little Dizzy's, a historic Creole restaurant in Tremé.
Because of location. That's very important. A lot of people don't understand that. If you have the wrong location, you really got to work extra hard to get it done.
But it was that location that primed New Orleans for one of the worst natural disasters in United States history. Over 20 years ago, on August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans.
And Katrina was a real trigger for change in the demographics. People came to help, Habitat for Humanity, whatever it might be, and they fell in love with this place, and they moved here. I know several.
The hurricane fundamentally resurrected New Orleans. The movement of people, buildings, and landscape also meant the movement and evolution of cuisine. In the year after Katrina, the population halved due to migration. In the year 2000, New Orleans had the highest rate of black poverty of any major city in the U.S., and majority black neighborhoods were the most harshly impacted by the hurricane. This means that far more black families left the city than white families, never to return. While it's difficult to determine the exact demographic changes over the last 20 years, you can get a sense for an influx of new neighbors from Hispanic or Asian cultures from the changes in local foods.
There is some hand-wringing about if every ramen shop is replacing a po' boy shop or something, is it diluting our culture? I don't think so, because I think it's healthy to have a greater palette of things as long as the base is there.
That's Ian McNulty, a food journalist whose years of experience eating and writing make him a trusted voice among New Orleans locals. He says that New Orleans flavors don't actually solidify in restaurants. They're born in people's homes.
In my realm, as someone who follows restaurants obsessively, it is like the underlying food culture that comes from home cooking, that comes from the gumbo in the back of the stove, that powers the whole food scene here, that gives it an audience. Your population is sort of trained on this, to have this palate, of, this is what really good, flavorful food is like. And they take that with them when they want to go check out Korean food.
This is not the neighborhood I knew. And so I think the lesson for me, and maybe the lesson you should consider, is not to hate change, but to embrace it. No, it's not the neighborhood I used to live in, but it's a pretty cool neighborhood.
There are legitimate concerns related to neighborhoods changing. There is no doubt that the losses after Katrina were very real. And as the gaps are filled back in and some neighborhoods become more expensive and less accessible, restaurants like Duck E. Cheese's are fighting back against concerns about gentrification and the co-opting of culture.
No matter how much this neighborhood changes and people may be coming in and build $1 million house next door, I'm not changing my price to you. I want to make sure my neighbor that's been here for 60 years across the street can still come in here and dine in this restaurant.
This week's show is cooked up by a guest reporting team at the University of Missouri, including Toriana Miller, Shane Legess, Lola Jahant, Amber Roldan, Tanvi Kulkarni, and Ron Stadgil. You can find the rest of our series at whoownstheflavor.com. Our theme music is by DJ Supreme. Special thanks to our partner stations at WBHM, Mississippi Public Broadcasting, WWNO, and WRKF. You can find us in your podcast feeds every Friday. Look us up and be sure to subscribe. Again, I'm your host, Sophia Anderson. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to stir your roux.